Good evening, everybody. And we are here in Deborah and Nick's upper elementary classroom gardens. And just going to give you a little tour. The Stokesia is in bloom. This is also known as Stokes aster. It was named after a guy named Stokes. So if you discover a plant, you can name it whatever you want. A lot of people name it after someone they know or love or respect. I don't know who Stokes was. I think he was a botanist. We'll have to look it up. But I planted this plant 2.5 years ago, so now it's finally very happy. It took it a while to establish. So with gardening, patience is the key. I usually get credit for the things I do about 2 to 3 years after I do them. That's an important lesson in life. You guys should know what this plant is by now. This is milkweed. This is the tropical non-native milkweed, and you can tell because it has kind of a brownish, purplish hue to its branches. And let's give an example of one that is native. This is tuberosa, a native type of milkweed, so it's a Cephalus tuberosa, and it has yellow flowers instead of red flowers. But see how it's super green? It's greener. It doesn't have like a purpley hue. So we'll go and look for another example to tell the difference. Again, here's the tropical. It's darker, it's green, but it's dark green, and it has the red flowers. So we've got several species. I'm trying to grow more native species. This here is a native species. This is a native persimmon. So we have some persimmons out by the side of middle school, and they're delicious. Those are Asian persimmons. We have a native persimmon too, and that's what this tree is. Now this tree is not self-pollinating. It needs to be pollinated by another individual. So that's why we have that persimmon tree planted over there. So they don't need to be right next to each other. The birds and the bumblebees and bats and all kinds of insects will bring that pollen over to this persimmon tree. So just taking a little whirlwind spin there. Let's come over here, and we have another native plant. This is American holly, and holly has a beautiful red berry, which is why we've planted it here, because this is the bird garden. That's the theme of the bird garden, or the theme of this garden is the bird garden. And this is a cherry tree, and this is also a native tree, and it's called black cherry. Now this black cherry tree has been having quite a hard time with the strong winds lately, and it's broken a bunch of branches. So I've been trimming them off, and it's going to look a little bit strange, the shapes of the branches, but I guess that's natural. I don't know if it's because it grew so fast and the branches are so long, but they're not that thick yet since it's still young. Okay, does anyone know what this plant is? This is a cool plant. This is called pokeweed. Some people call it poor man's lettuce because you can eat it when it's young. You do want to cook it though, otherwise it can be hard on your system. A lot of people call this a weed, and as you can see, it can get huge. This one gets watered by the kids, so it is the largest pokeweed I've ever seen. And down on below, it has like a giant carrot-like root. But it is native, and it is actually really beneficial to wildlife. So you can see it has these delicate little flowers, pink flowers. Let's see if we can get those in focus. And then the pink flowers turn into berries. So see, once again, we have berries that look a lot like the flowers. So that's normal, right? The flower gets pollinated, then it turns into the fruit. And those fruit can be extremely helpful for wildlife. I've seen birds just spend several days on one of these, and for whatever reason they needed that nutrition. They were not going to leave this tree till they refilled, and then maybe they had to go migrate on their way. So a lot of things we think of as weeds can be like lifesavers for wildlife. This is a bottle brush tree. This is not native, but I planted it because it's a favorite of hummingbirds. This one is just a baby, and it will get huge like this one, which is only 2.5 years old. It's very happy here. We have goldenrod, which is also native, a favorite source of pollen for bumblebees. One reason is because it blooms in the fall when a lot of other stuff is not blooming. So a lot of bees, including our honeybees, are completely dependent on the goldenrod to get them through that season when everything else is not providing food for them. So over here we have a little bird bath, because everybody needs water to live, fresh water to live. This is another bush. It's a ligustrum bush. It's not native. It does provide good habitat for nests, so birds like bushes and hedges to build their nests in. It does provide berries as well, but I don't think that the non-native berries are as good for our birds as the native berries are, unfortunately. So you're probably picking up on a theme. It's a berry theme, which is what makes this the bird garden. And this is called beautyberry. So this plant is deciduous, so it totally dies back in the winter, and then it grows very fast in the spring and summer, and it has these beautiful purple berries, which is why they're called beautyberries. And there's a lot of them around. They're native, so like when they bloom at the end of summer, you'll see them while you're driving around, and birds love them. This is a holly. It is not native. It's a Japanese holly, but the birds will eat it just the same. And in here, in our teepee, we built this teepee with the middle school community art class. And in here I have 2 different types of gourds growing. Planted these right after you guys left. This is a loofah gourd, and over here we have a big bottle gourd, and we've also planted a dogwood tree, baby dogwood tree right here. It's having a hard time. It just got transplanted. Dogwoods also provide native fruit for birds that we don't eat, but it's one of their favorites. If we come over here, we have another native tree. This is called a toothache tree, and it has these cool leaves that when you eat them, some of you guys really love this, it will make your mouth numb. And so dentists used to use an extract from the bark to actually numb people's mouths before they had to pull teeth or do dental work. This tree is it is the host plant to the giant swallowtail, which is the largest butterfly in North America. And that means that this tree is in the citrus family. So I didn't know that, but I know that if the giant swallowtail's eating it, then it has to be in that family, because that's the family that the giant swallowtail can eat, and that's the only thing its caterpillar can eat. So you guys have an orange tree here where we have found the crazy giant swallowtail butterflies. Hopefully I can get a video of one of their caterpillars this summer. They are really cool. They're huge. Citrus farmers call them orange puppies because they find them on their orange trees, and they're big, like little puppies. So this is a service berry, so another native berry that birds love. And over here we have more goldenrod, and right here we have, do you guys recognize these? More blueberries. Almost ripe. They're getting there. So these ones don't have as much berries as some of the ones in the other yards because they have a little bit more shade. But that means they're going to survive easier in our hot summers and probably grow a little bit faster and healthier. So we have 2 more blueberries. Remember where they are, because they don't always have berries and they don't always have leaves. So you want to remember so you don't try to rip them out or cut them down when you forget what they are. So plants, they don't just produce year long. They all have seasons. Everything has a season. So this is a native strawberry, and you can see how it's very similar. You recognize it from the strawberries that we grow at farms and in our gardens. So it has a tiny strawberry that's also delicious. It's just smaller and not quite as productive as the other ones, and that's why we choose those to farm with. We've got lantana, also a native plant, although the white version might be a hybrid of some kind. When somebody finds like an odd plant in nature, they can reproduce it and sell it, for its odd variety, like the fact that it came out white. It doesn't mean it's a different species. It's just like a different variety. Okay, so let's head over to the vegetable part of the garden. Over here we have some parsley. So you may think to yourself, that looks just like the dill that we saw in Heather and Jessica's garden. And it is. It's in the same family. See how it has an umbel, giant umbel made of little umbels? And these are kind of finished flowering. There's the flowers. They're very, very tiny. And now it's starting to produce seeds. So they're still very green. They haven't turned into seed yet. Another plant in the same family as parsley. See here, I'll give you a close-up on the leaf, on the parsley leaf. And here's some umbels that are farther along in their seed-producing process. And over here we have cilantro. So the cilantro's past its season. It's a winter crop, but if you look really close, you can see, what are these? These are coriander seeds. So your parents probably buy these in a jar from the grocery store, and put them in your food. You just put them all in your food, just like that. And you can eat them. They have a nice peppery flavor. So what I'm doing is I trimmed them because they're dead, and then I just threw them on the ground here, all the seed pods, and I'm just going to let them plant themselves in the same place next year. So that's a low maintenance garden. Technically that's called permaculture, where you have a more permanent system of growing plants. Traditional agriculture would just rip everything out every season and start fresh, and you get like maybe bigger and more produce faster, but you have to do a lot of work and have to add a lot of fertilizer and a lot of digging and enough tractors and a workforce and all this stuff. So what I do is, instead, since I'm just one person and I get exhausted, is I just plant the summer crops amongst the winter crops. So like this is the cilantro, which is now dying out because it's the beginning of summer. And then this is the okra, which I planted a few weeks ago. And when it was young and tender and like really susceptible to the sun, the cilantro was alive and shaded it and helped it not to die. But now that the cilantro is dying, the okra is big enough to handle that sun, and it wants the sun, and it's going to grow big and tall. So I don't till the soil. It's called a no-till system, and it's just easier to maintain now. It makes it hard to rotate crops if you do it that way. Some farmers really like to rotate their crops so that pest species don't like build up in one area, or you don't suck all the nutrients out. But my rotation is more in planting. So the winter and the summer crop is sort of the rotation. So we've got another baby okra. We had a cool spring, and a lot of my seedlings didn't sprout. So I just had to plant what grew, which was okra. So we'll have a lot of okra when we come back to school next year. Better pick up some trash. I don't want little birds to eat that, or any little creature. It's the tiny pieces that are really dangerous, not the big pieces, the tiny things animals like to eat. So over here, this plant is called ground cherry. This is a really interesting plant. It is native and it grows like a weed. We got it from the forest, and now we're growing it here in the garden. And I've read about people actually growing it in fields and farming it and selling it at farmers markets. It's in the Tomatia family. You can see it looks like a nightshade. It's similar to an eggplant or a tomato, which are also in that family. And so this one's pretty cool because it has tons of little buds forming. So you can see these little buds forming, and then they turn into flowers. And the flowers, there's a bud. The flowers point to the ground. So they're not for us, as usual. They're for little insects on the ground that it's trying to attract. And so you have to kind of look down. Here's some of the flowers, but they're not open. And then they turn into these really cool paper lanterns. And I wish I could find one for you guys. They are a paper lantern. Here's one. Do you see it? And inside, this one's not ready. It'll turn brown when it's ready. It's like a little tomato. It's not ready to eat until it's orange and it falls on the ground. That's why it's called ground cherry, because you're supposed to harvest it off the ground. It can make you kind of sick if you eat it when it's not ripe. So that's what we're growing here. And then in the middle, we have a whole row of garlic chives, which is a winter crop. I don't know what the difference is between garlic chives and chives, or garlic chives and garlic, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with them. So if you know, let me know. A lot of food does get wasted here, but luckily we have a bunny that likes to live here and eat the food that we're not eating. This is all kale, and it's very healthy. Kale is also a winter crop, so you can see how the leaves are starting to turn red. So like for winter crops, spring is like the fall, so it's going to start to die back and not look so healthy. It's still not too late. You can still eat kale. It doesn't have to be fresh and young like lettuce, and anyone that wants to come harvest it, please do. The way you would do that is you would just cut all these bottom stalks, take these leaves home and cook them in your frying pan, and then you just leave the center, and then the center keeps reproducing. And I've had kale live for a couple years. Like, it'll look ugly in the summer, but it will revive in the fall if it doesn't die. It doesn't live forever, just like a year or two. And then this right here, you can see I'm letting it go to seed because I want it to plant more of itself. This is a radish. So we've got radishes. Planted these. We actually planted bok choy with Franklin and all of the class, and it didn't grow. So I planted radish, and then I forgot that I planted radish, and then when it grew, I thought it was bok choy, until I noticed the red radish sticking out. But this is these are the seed pods. See, so we're making lots of good radish seeds. Now the radish doesn't taste so good once it starts to make seed, and that's kind of a general rule for a lot of things. Here I'm letting the lettuce go to seed, and it will feed pollinators as it flowers, and then make lots of seeds, so we'll have lettuce next winter. And lettuce, you know, when it gets old and it starts to seed, it starts to produce kind of like this milky sap, and that's one way you know it's kind of like a little bit too old to eat. We've got some sunflowers. They are already forming their buds. Just a perfect mandala of beauty. Miss Deborah and Mr. Nick and I want to make this garden also the art garden. Like, maybe we could do some cool works of art that could be added. And then here you have baby lettuce. So that lettuce would be good to eat. And here we have baby mustard. If you guys remember the giant plant that was right here, that was mustard. Pollinators were really loving it for a while. While it was blooming, do you remember there were like a million of these yellow flowers? And they all went to seed, and I let it seed out, and I let it spread its seeds, so you can see that it made pods. And these are mustard seeds. Mustard seeds are really tiny. There's, you know, a little seed right there. Do you see it? It's not in focus. But there's like a part in the Bible where it says, I'm going to misquote now, but it's something about like what's inside of a mustard seed. You know, it's so tiny, but inside of it is a huge plant. and that's true for all seeds. But mustard seed is especially tiny, and so it's planted little baby mustards all around. Those are all little baby mustards, and we're gonna let them grow even though it's not their season, and just probably eat them in the winter. We have lots of zinnias, just gorgeous. I like to plant flowers in and among the crops. Maybe in like a commercial garden they wouldn't want to do that. They would want to get the full amount of sun to their crops, but our crops don't have like constant irrigation, so they kind of need a little bit of shade sometimes. We have some beautiful green peppers. This pepper is 2 years old now. It survive the winter. Peppers are typically planted like an annual, and they die every winter, but we haven't had a hard freeze in this part of the country for at least 2 winters, so we're getting peppers that are just becoming perennial and turning into pepper trees. This is a baby zinnia, so you want to learn to recognize the babies, and that way you know what to weed and what not to weed. Over here we have a beet, also winter crop, so we could harvest this. This is ready to be harvested. This one's a little bit past harvest time. This is a green onion, but you can still harvest these. Green spikes are delicious, but look how huge it's getting. I don't know if you remember how tiny it was like a few months ago, but it's like a huge onion down there. So this garden, I do weed it a lot, but certain weeds I like to leave. So this plant here, I don't know what it is, but I love it because it's short. It makes a nice ground cover, and it keeps worse weeds out like grass. So here's the grass, and I don't want that. That's going to get tall and smother everything. But this short one, it doesn't hurt anything. Not only does it sometimes add nutrients to the soil when it dies, but even when it's alive, because different plants use different nutrients, and in the process they make other nutrients available by breaking down the molecules in the soil. But it's also forming a mulch. So you can see how I have the leaves right here. Mulch keeps out sunlight and keeps weeds from growing, and also keeps in moisture and keeps plants from getting too dry, and keeps them warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And this is just a living mulch. So you can have a dead mulch that you constantly have to replace, or you can have a living mulch. But remember, most plants are seasonal, so you usually have to have, like, if you have a living mulch, you have to have like a winter mulch and a summer mulch. So here's another plant. This is Swiss chard. You can see by its bright, thought it was a beet, but I don't see a beet. I think it's either Swiss chard or a beet. Let's come over here and look at this one. It's the same one, and we can decide. Yeah, this is Swiss chard. So it's called rainbow chard, and it's similar to a beet. They're both what we would call leafy greens. Leafy greens, like the winter. Typically, other leafy greens would be lettuce, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. This is marigold, so we're letting it grow. We planted seed a couple years ago, and then when those seeded, we spread the seeds. Marigold is an it's like an insect repellent, and so people like to plant it around their crops, like especially around tomatoes. Those two plants complement each other, and the marigolds keep the insects under control, so we plant those. in the garden as well. So, as you can see, there's more than enough going on in the garden to keep us busy forever. But I know I've got to let you go, and I hope to get some videos out of the rest of the gardens that we haven't gotten to yet. I miss you guys. I hope you're doing well. Aloha.